2 years later, I still can't let go of Laura, my high school friend. From intense feelings to a heartbreaking distance, we shared moments that felt significant. I moved away, but I can't shake the longing for her. Did I let my chance for love slip away? I, a 20-year-old male, met and became very close to them, a 21-year-old non-binary individual, during our sophomore year of high school. I will refer to them as Laura for my convenience. We quickly became friends, and after a day or two, I developed a slight crush on them. However, they began a relationship before I had the opportunity to express my feelings, so I chose to suppress my emotions since we were getting along well, and I did not want to jeopardize our friendship. By March, we entered lockdown due to COVID-19, and our communication ceased because their ex-boyfriend constantly blocked me simply for being close to them. At that point, I was speaking with someone else and was not solely focused on Laura. By the year's end, they broke up, and we resumed talking, but they were in a long-distance relationship at the time, so our interactions remained purely platonic. In the summer of 2021, I began planning my birthday celebration and invited Laura to Disneyland. Simultaneously, they were navigating a challenging situation with the person they were seeing, and I tried my best to ensure they were okay throughout that time. However, as more issues arose between Laura and their boyfriend, I found myself liking them again. Unfortunately, Laura began cheating on him with one of their coworkers. I continued to support them, but I was anxious because my feelings for them were intensifying. This increased when we treated our Disneyland trip like a date and nearly kissed after school. Things took a turn for the worse when I confided in some friends, who subsequently informed Laura's boyfriend about the cheating while they were streaming. I realized I had made a mistake, and my friends treated it as a joke even though I was profoundly upset about the entire situation. Afterward, Laura and I stopped communicating for about 2.5 months, but we had mutual friends who were not involved in telling Laura's ex-boyfriend about the cheating, with whom we would talk and inquire about each other, unbeknownst to me. I was extremely depressed during that period, but they eventually texted me, and we started to reconcile a few days later. Around Christmas break, they confessed that they liked me, but they believed they were not good enough for me. I told them that was absurd, but they continued to communicate with the same coworker they had met in August and decided to date him until it became public that he was cheating on them around Valentine's Day and had another girlfriend he was concealing from Laura. They broke up but reconciled during spring break. I thought it was foolish to return to him, especially after he had shattered their trust. I distanced myself from the situation, believing they were making a poor choice and not wanting to be overbearing. After graduation and during the summer, we maintained limited contact. Eventually, they informed me that he was cheating again, and they ended it for good. I reassured them and tried to support them, and during this time, I began to recognize how deeply I loved them. I realized that anyone else caught up in this much drama would have pushed me away, yet I was still completely enamored with them. This culminated in Laura sending me an extensive message detailing how they had always loved me, how they wished we had been together during the 2 instances we had romantic sparks, and how their exes were exceedingly jealous of our friendship. I was somewhat taken aback by this revelation. We went to see a movie together, resulting in our first kiss. Honestly, I do not believe I have ever felt anything near the intensity of that moment, which reinforced how much I cherished being around them and how often I thought about that long-awaited kiss. After that night, something ignited within me, and we grew closer, although there were still instances of distance between us. I am unsure whether it stemmed from my breakup or my self-doubt, but I hesitated to fully commit at that moment, so I gradually distanced myself until we returned to being close friends. After 2 months of this on-and-off dynamic between us being affectionate, Laura attended a concert and jokingly mentioned wanting to get a performer's number, which stung a bit. I also discovered they had started talking to someone new at a job they had recently acquired. Initially, I thought I was not very hurt by it, but I increasingly despised the feeling of being an option and wanted them solely for myself. I began drinking and became emotionally unavailable. Eventually, I decided to give them their Christmas presents and blocked them on all platforms. Before cutting off communication entirely, I asked them out and inquired about the other guy, asking if they truly liked him. They mentioned that their coworkers wanted them to date, and when I asked what they wanted, They simply responded, "I don't know." The next day, I decided to block them because rather than provide them with more time to reflect or elaborate, I acted bluntly and immaturely in an effort to protect myself. Following this, some friends criticized Laura, and I was left with a circle I could confide in about how poorly they made me feel. I began to do everything I could to distance myself from Laura, even relocating to a completely different state across the country. I essentially created an entirely new life for myself and made every effort to move on. Unfortunately, none of the connections I made with others came close to what I had with Laura. There are countless reasons that make them special to me, and while I may have painted them in a negative light here, we shared a great many positive moments that do not quite fit this narrative. I miss them deeply. Ultimately, they ended up with the person they were working with, and I am uncertain whether they still think about me, let alone harbor any feelings for me after everything that transpired. Recently, I have been reflecting on our time together and realized that I tolerated much of the chaos simply because it was Laura. I would do anything for the chance to sit down and talk with them, to hear their voice, and to gaze into their eyes. I miss them tremendously and genuinely believe we had something special, but I denied my own happiness because I feared I would not be sufficient and was apprehensive about what my friends or family might think after all the events that unfolded. I wish I had met Laura later in life. Perhaps I am being somewhat unrealistic, but I sometimes wonder if they could have been the love of my life. Story 2. My 21F. Forgetfulness leaves my girlfriend 20F, feeling hurt, and it just keeps happening. I began dating her more than a year ago, and I love her deeply. I hope that after we graduate, we will be able to move in together, although it does not appear that same-sex marriage will be legalized here anytime soon. For context, that illustrates the seriousness of our relationship. However, there is a recurring issue that leads to arguments between us. This issue arises when I make plans that do not materialize because I forget that another event or task conflicts with the timing, and I realize this almost at the last minute. It is entirely understandable that she feels upset whenever this occurs. My home is at least a 45-minute commute from hers, typically taking about an hour. We attend the same university but are in different departments. The campus is large, so we only see each other during our lunch breaks, assuming we actually have time during those breaks. Due to these circumstances and the demands of our studies, we do not have ample time for dates, so when one plan falls through, it significantly impacts both of us. I have been forgetful since childhood, and I do everything I can to combat it. I set alarms on my phone, I keep a journal, and I try to plan, but despite my efforts, I eventually slip. We have established a set time, 10:30 p.m. every night, when we aim to set aside everything and communicate via text or call. The way this routine developed is somewhat unfortunate. I had spent a semester in the United Kingdom as part of an exchange program when we established that timing. For me, it was 5 p.m. when I returned to India. I assumed we were no longer maintaining fixed timings since we could meet in person again and everything, so I took it lightly, not realizing that she continued to text me regularly at 10:30 each night. I missed a few nights, which upset her, making me aware of the situation. Even afterward, I forgot a few more times. I set an alarm on my phone for 10:30, which made it easier for me, but when she learned about the alarm, it had the opposite effect I intended. Rather than feeling as though I was making an effort, she perceived it as treating the situation like a burden. It truly is not. I love talking to her. The most recent argument unfolded like any other. I planned to meet her on a Thursday, and it seemed that nothing would interfere. On Tuesday, my dog began limping, and no one had seen her fall. On Wednesday, I called the clinic but realized it was closed that day, so we would have to go the next day. I was aware of this and that I was supposed to meet her, yet somehow, I failed to connect the dots that I could not do both on the same day. I remembered this around midnight while texting her, and yes, she was upset. Each time I do this, it worsens because it accumulates with everything else I have done wrong. She mentioned telling her friends, whom she had previously turned down, to book tickets for a movie and decided to back out of the upcoming event we both wanted to attend. The entire next day, I was so sad that I could hardly get out of bed. The whole day at college passed somehow, and in the evening, I texted her to say I didn't feel like talking because I was unsure how I could cheer someone up if I felt miserable. One of the things she replied was, "If it helps, I'm not mad anymore." So I did engage in some conversation, but then asked whether she was truly sure she was no longer upset because I had a feeling otherwise. She said she felt like she prioritized me all the time, only to have that disregarded, which made me defensive in response. I probably should not have reacted that way, but I had spent the entire day feeling sad and stressed about it. I felt she was unfairly portraying me as unfeeling. Ultimately, she concluded that the worst part was that, in the end, it was not my fault. I had made an effort, yet she still ended up hurt every time. What troubles me is that there is never a clear resolution to this issue. The next time I inevitably make a mistake, she will recall every single time I have done so before, and it will continue to accumulate. She once mentioned that she might not have given me as much priority if she had her previous friend group from before moving to my city because she is an extrovert, and her current friend circle is rather inadequate. I was uncertain how to feel about that. It honestly hurt, as if I were meant to be a substitute for her socializing needs. What bothers me significantly this time is that even though we met the next day, on Friday, and spent quality time together, the joy of seeing her did not seem to outweigh the anxiety and guilt I felt the previous day. I worry that I will fall out of love with her. She truly is a caring and wonderful girlfriend, and I do not want that to happen. I am graduating in a few months and will move out of state to pursue my 2-year master's degree, while she completes the remaining 2 years of her degree. I have a 3-year bachelor's while she has 4. Thus, we will face 2 years of long distance. How will I manage? To summarize, my poor time management often leads to canceled plans, which frustrates my girlfriend. I need to find a way to break out of this cycle,